So in today's video, we're going to be answering a question as to whether we can create a brand new version of the Boss RC-300 by using the brand new Boss RC-500 and combining that with the brand new Boss RC-5. Ever since the Boss RC-500 has been announced, Boss's latest flagship dual-track looper pedal, everyone has been asking why haven't they released a 3-track replacement of the Boss RC-300. So in today's video, I'm going to show you a temporary solution that you could possibly create until Boss finally update the RC-300. So now let me take you through the actual setup of this DIY Boss RC-300. So the plan here is we're going to take the Boss RC-500 and MIDI sync it with the Boss RC-5. Now I'm going to make the Boss RC-500 be the master looper pedal, and I will MIDI slave the Boss RC-5 to the master unit, because obviously the RC-500 has got 2 loop tracks, so we're primarily going to be doing all of our looping on this looper pedal, and we'll use the RC-3 as a complementary loop pedal, maybe record a drum beat on there now and again, and utilize that 3rd track in specific songs within our performance. So to connect the 2 loop pedals together, you will require an aux cord cable. This is just a standard sort of MP3 style player cable that you will find on an old stereo lying around at home. And the cool thing is, with the Boss RC-5, for the first ever time, Boss's single track looper pedals now have MIDI capability because they have the mini TRS MIDI jacks now, and they've made the connections a lot smaller than the traditional 5-pin MIDI cables. So because both of these looper pedals support this format, it's going to be dead easy to connect the 2 loop stations together. So we're going to go MIDI out on the Boss RC-500, and we'll connect the other end of the cable into the MIDI in of the Boss RC-5. Now, just to prove that the Boss RC-5 is synced to the Boss RC-500, I'm going to turn on the onboard rhythm track, and you will see that the onboard tempo lights are flashing in sync with one another. And also, if I change presets on the looper pedal, you can see the RC-5 is responding to the preset chains on the RC-500, which is really cool. So now let's move on to the instrument setup on the 2 looper pedals. Now, thanks to the brand new audio routing capabilities and features found on the RC-500, it's never been so simple to route audio between 2 looper pedals like we are just about to. Now, last year I did a video MIDI syncing 2 Boss RC-300s together to create a 6-track loop station. You can check that video out over here. And inside of that video, in order to achieve inputting the same instruments into both loop pedal 1 and loop pedal 2, we had to set up an external mixing console, do some crazy wiring routing, total nightmare, and a total headache to actually set that up. Whereas now, all we need is one cable like this to connect the 2 looper pedals together, and everything else is set up native inside of the loop station. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to plug this guitar jack cable into output B on the Boss RC-500, and we'll plug the other end into input A on the Boss RC-5. So this is going to give us a mono connection from the RC-500 directly into the RC-5. And this isn't going to be a problem for today's setup because I'm just using acoustic guitar, so that's just mono anyways. It's nothing fancy, no delay pedals or reverbs pedals coming into the input stereo. So to route this correctly, we want to head into this input menu over here, where we have loads of audio routing options with the RC-500 that gives you a lot of flexibility. So we're going to scroll over to this option here called Instrument In. Now, by default, this will be set up to be output A plus B. So whatever is inputted into the RC-500, by default, will be outputted via output A and B, usually as a stereo output directly into your mixing console as a standard setup. However, we want to actually change this. So this cable right here on my RC-500 is my output of this looper pedal. So this is going straight into my mixing console and straight out of my PA speakers. Same is true for this cable on the Boss RC-5. That's just going directly out into my mixing console, straight out of the speakers for the audience to hear. But the problem we're going to have is, because this is currently set up to be output A plus B, anything being inputted into the looper pedal will be directly outputted via this cable here, and it will be directly outputted into this looper pedal and out via this cable here. So it means we're going to double up the inputted audio, and it's going to sound really weird, digital, and like phasing over the top of itself. It's just basically going to sound totally incorrect. So we want to disable this output here for the instrument in monitoring, and we want to exclusively set it to output B so nothing is heard out of this cable. So we'll select this parameter and we will change it to be output B. So now anything being inputted into the looper pedal will be outputted via this cable into this looper pedal, and then out of this cable into our mixing console. So we've totally erased the issue of doubling up the audio. It's so easy compared to other Boss looper pedals setting this up. This is an absolute breeze. So now that we've set up the instrument in, you can repeat the process as well for the microphone in as well if you're using a microphone to direct that through this looper pedal. But for today's demonstration, I am not using a mic. So what we now want to do is we want to actually set up our loop track outputs. Now the cool thing on the Boss RC-500 is we now have the ability to determine which output the loop tracks will output from, which is awesome for separating the loop tracks, and it's super awesome for this setup in today's video. So we'll go to the track settings here, scroll all the way over until we get to this parameter right here called track 1 output. Now by default this will be set to all, which means track 1 will output via output A and also output B as a stereo loop track. But what we'll do is we'll set this to be output A. So now what we've done here is we have output B with our instrument in going to this loop pedal, and output A is now our loop track output. And we'll do the same for loop track 2, select loop track 2, and we'll scroll over to be output A. So now we've split the output. So just to summarize what I've set up here, in case you got lost on the way before we proceed, basically anything that is recorded into a loop track and played back will be outputted via output A. So the outputs of the loops, both track 1 and track 2, will be outputted on this cable, and anything that we input into the loop pedal and we play live, for example, just playing the guitar over our loop tracks that we've recorded, that will be outputted separately from the loop track audio, and that will be fed into this loop pedal. Now the reason why we want to do this is because if we left it by default, anything that is outputted while the loop tracks are playing back would be inputted into loop track 3 on the RC-5, which then meant if we were to record a loop on this looper pedal, it would also record the audio and contents of loop track 1, which then meant if we stopped loop track 1, it would continue to play on our RC-5, which is totally not what we want to achieve. So by doing this setup, we have separated the audio we play live on our guitar separate from the output of the loop tracks. Now my final thoughts on the setup tested in today's video are the 2 loop pedal setup does work exactly the same as the Boss RC-300 does for the most part. However, there's a huge factor that you have to be aware of, and that is if you trigger playback on the Boss RC-5 first before triggering playback of your loops on the Boss RC-500, the MIDI sync between the 2 devices will be broken. So this means if you trigger the RC-5 and then trigger a loop track on the RC-500, the RC-500 will play out of sync with the RC-5. However, if you are very confident and proficient with your loop timing and you trigger the RC-500 perfectly in time with the RC-5, this isn't an issue whatsoever. And for me, I found once I got used to that workflow with this loop pedal, it didn't become too huge of a problem. Now, if you trigger your loops on the RC-500 first and then trigger your RC-5, the loop sync is still complete between the 2 devices. So it works exactly the same as the loop sync would on the 3 tracks available on the RC-300. So there's no issues with timings on the RC-5 syncing up with the RC-500. It works perfectly fine, but it's something you may need to reconsider the way you go about creating your loops and what loops you put on the RC-5, depending on how you're going to reintroduce those and remove them during your performance. Now, if you want to learn more about the settings available on your Boss looper pedal, be sure to check out the links in the video description down below for my ultimate guide series on all of the loop pedals mentioned in today's video. And if you enjoyed the video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and also consider subscribing for future videos just like this one. But as always, I've been Ben Rollins. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.